I have devoted all of my adult life to this subject. I only debate with my equals. All others I teach.
We think that they are foolish to allow themselves to be beaten and brutalized and do nothing whatsoever to protect themselves. They are foolish. They should have the right to defend themselves against any attack made against them by anyone. If a dog is biting a black man, the black man should kill the dog. Whether the dog is a police dog, a hound dog, or any kind of dog. If a dog is sick on a black man, when that black man is doing nothing but trying to take advantage of what the government says is supposed to be his, then that black man should kill that dog or any two-legged dog who sicks the dog on.
Should other black men
Honorable Elijah Muhammad, number one, don't believe in any form of integration, and believe that every mention of the word integration by whites, whether it be from the mouth of Kennedy on down to the mouth of the lowest, raggediest white liberal in the street who is beating it like involving himself in these integration efforts, if we believed in it, we would integrate. And we would fight anybody who got in our way or made any effort whatsoever to stop us from integrating. If we really believe that the law of the land, the Supreme Court, and other so-called judicial bodies were for real when they talked about integration, we would integrate.
We were sitting around the dinner table, some students and people, and the question came to you both. Well, wait, this now, you guys may not believe in God or something.
I am married to an ex-nun, an ex-Roman Catholic nun. I drive her to 35 years we've been married a few days ago, and I drive her to church on occasion. I'll go in and listen. I'll go to the mosque. I'll go to the Buddhist temple. I go to anybody's religion because religion is a belief. Nobody has it. Now, you ask if I believe in God, you must first explain, because I met the guy that robbed my house, believed in God. He had a big cross on his chest when they caught him and down at the prison. He believed that would stop him from robbing my house. Believing in God don't make you good or bad. The Ku Klux Klan believe in God. The one thing that they said that they have established a religion to protect the name of Jesus. So the whole philosophy. Most of the people in the Bible Belt will cut your throat for being black. Did the Bible stop them from being racist? No. That doesn't mean a thing because you believe. You believe that your behavior are two different things. And people ask, you believe in God, you don't believe in God. So what's that mean? It doesn't mean I won't cut your throat.
Okay, but you said earlier that if we stop paying black preachers tomorrow morning,
the church will close. How many of them come in to do volunteer work? It's a business. It's a salary people get out of it, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, or what.
Christianity and religion as we know it is a business?
biggest business is bigger than IT&T.
You get all kinds of breaks, tax breaks, and all kinds of privileges when you're the minister.
His salary's paid. You think the president is getting a big salary? He can get the biggest salary of all. Do you think? No, let's face it. How many ministers you know doing it for free?
Okay, let's just drop.
10% tax and see how, if you gonna get buried. He may come to the undertaker parlor and say, "You know what? We're not coming to the cemetery."
I have devoted all of my adult life to this subject. I only debate with my equals. All others I teach.
We think that they are foolish to allow themselves to be beaten and brutalized and do nothing whatsoever to protect themselves. They are foolish. They should have the right to defend themselves against any attack made against them by anyone. If a dog is biting a black man, the black man should kill the dog. Whether the dog is a police dog, a hound dog, or any kind of dog. If a dog is sick on a black man, when that black man is doing nothing but trying to take advantage of what the government says is supposed to be his, then that black man should kill that dog or any two-legged dog who sicks the dog on.
Should other black men
Honorable Elijah Muhammad, number one, don't believe in any form of integration and believe that every mention of the word integration by whites, whether it be from the mouth of Kennedy on down to the mouth of the lowest, raggediest white liberal in the street who is beatnik-like involving himself in these integration efforts, if we believed in it, we would integrate. And we would fight anybody who got in our way or made any effort whatsoever to stop us from integrating. If we really believe that the law of the land, the Supreme Court, and other so-called judicial bodies were for real when they talked about integration, we would integrate.
We were sitting around the dinner table, some students and people, and the question came to you both. Well, wait, this time you guys may not believe in God or something.
I am married to an ex-nun, an ex-Roman Catholic nun. I drive her to church. 35 years we've been married a few days ago, and I drive her to church on occasion. I'll go in and listen. I'll go to the mosque. I'll go to the Buddhist temple. I go to anybody's religion because religion is a belief. Nobody has it. Now, You ask if I am believe in God, you must first explain, because I met the guy that robbed my house.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we're going to take a closer look at Darwin, and we're going to look at Darwin in his own words, right? Not what everybody like to say Darwin said, or not what everybody believes what Darwin was talking about, but let's take a look at Darwin in his own words, because what better way to find out a man's intent but by his own words, right? So, the reason why I wanted to have this show, because when people talk about Darwin and the potential racist aspect of Darwin, they usually say things like Darwin was a man of his time. And I believe that when people say that, they kind of minimalize his intent as to say, hey, it was the times back then and everybody was like that. Don't necessarily mean it was right, but he was just kind of doing what everybody was doing. And, we know that's not right anymore. And yes and no. But whenever people talk like that, I feel like it's euphemistic, like euphemisms, right? Basically trying to soften it up as if Darwin didn't know exactly what he was doing, right? With natural selection and evolution. You know what I mean? So we're going to take a look at what Darwin was trying to do with natural selection, evolution, and survival of the fittest, and all this type of stuff. So let's get into it. First of all, I just want to lay the foundation of what, people try to do with science. You have science and then you have pseudoscience. And pseudoscience is when, a part of pseudoscience anyway is when people let their own biases seep in, right? It's like bogus science masquerading as legitimate science. And we're always at odds with pseudoscience too, because pseudoscience sometimes look like legitimate science. And we're always having to redefine, reevaluate, science. Science is ever changing, right? And what we know to be today is the truth may not be factual tomorrow, right? And that's within every branch of science. And I think everybody knows that, right? And the thing is, people like to think that, there's no politics in science, and there absolutely is, right? So we have to be aware of these things, man. And if we're not aware that people can interject their biases and politics inside science, and you just accept science as objective because science is supposed to be neutral, right? It's supposed to be, but that don't mean there's not sinister guys always trying to push things in the way in which they believe they should go, which in my opinion is the duty of men, right? So we need to be aware of these things. So where I want to take is to a video I done, and it's really a great video. And I'm going to start it like in the middle. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but I'm going to start it in the middle just so we can look at a certain aspect of what I want to talk about concerning Darwin, right? And the way how people frame things, right? So natural selection is neutral, but it's the way that he was trying to wield it, right? Mechanisms are neutral. Whenever real science is neutral, but you can frame things in a particular way that will make them biased, or what have you. So let's take a look at this video. It's my video called Genetic Diversity is a Euphemism, which is a question, that I asked. And great video. You guys check it out on the principles. Here we go.
1600 to 1900, rise of pseudoscience. Scientific racism is the idea that race is biological and that there's a natural hierarchy amongst racial groups, and white people are at the top, substantiated by an array of pseudoscientific methods and theories, but essentially the same in principle as the Church and the Greeks. While trying to create society, it seems man from every culture have been looking for some objective means to establish some kind of legitimate hierarchy through nature to qualify and classify status in our hierarchical societies. Is there some objective quality in a group of men that is advantageous over another group substantially? Or is this a strategy that predatory, narcissistic, ego-driven men use as a tool to create power and control over unsuspecting groups? As you can see in the past, man has used a variety of methods to try to create some kind of legit hierarchy, whether it be sanctioned by God, the king, queen, and even by science. In the present, we still struggle with these outdated concepts and ideas of classism and status today. Let's take a look at what science today has to say about biological advantages in populations.
So that is the premise, trying to legitimize hierarchy, right? And, people try to do that through science. So let's go back a little bit. Deal with this premise, how are people trying to legitimize hierarchy in different ways?
Is the idea that race is biological and that there's a natural hierarchy.
Do you believe that race is biological, right? Or is it a social construct, right? We was talking about the differences and the distinctions between people and how wide are the distinction or how close are they? And is it enough to really say that, we are different types of people? That's a question that's, up for discussion.
Amongst racial groups, and white people are at the top, substantiated by an array of pseudoscientific methods and theories, but essentially the same in principle as the church and the Greeks. While trying.
So if you're familiar with different types of hierarchies of the past, then you know that, in different religious groups, there's a hierarchy. Like even the divine, they have a hierarchy, it's God, angels, man, beast or animals, plants, so on and so forth, right? That's in the divine. They say God ordained that hierarchy, right? And then you even have in monarchies and stuff, you have the king, the queen, then you have what do you call them? The lords, and then maybe the priests is above them, and then you have the peasants, and then you have the knights and the slaves. I'm getting the order kind of messed up, but you see what I'm getting at. Every society through history, you know what I'm saying? You see these hierarchies emerge, and some people will argue that hierarchies are natural to men. And I think I make a good argument against that hierarchy is not necessarily natural in the way that people try to portray it, right? So let's move forward. So man is always trying to justify hierarchy. And when I say that, is this man is always trying to justify status and hierarchy and a means to stay in power. You know what I'm saying? Like if I can justify hierarchy through God, and God says that I'm supposed to be right here, or if I can legitimize hierarchy through biology, through science, right? It creates a caste, right? It creates permanent status, right? If my hierarchy can be justified by nature, I want you to think about that, right?
Trying to create society. It seems man from every culture have been looking for some objective means to establish some kind of legitimate hierarchy through nature to qualify and classify status in our hierarchical societies. Is there some objective quality in a group of men that is advantageous over another group substantially? Or is this a strategy that predatory, narcissistic, ego-driven men use as a tool to create power and control over unsuspecting groups? As you can see in the past, man has used a variety of methods to try to create some kind of legit hierarchy, whether it be sanctioned by God, the king, queen, and even by science. In the present, we still struggle with these outdated concepts and ideas of classism and status today. Let's take a look at what science today has to say about biological advantages in populations.
So that there is my premise, right? People trying to legitimize hierarchy. Not to say that hierarchy don't exist in nature, but legitimizing it, right? How do you legitimize hierarchy? So I want to bring us to something else, right? I want to show you something that I wrote. All right. Hopefully you guys can see this, but this is something that I put together. Not all of it is my words, but um, I think this kind of sums it up about Darwin's and his intentions and what he was trying to do, right? So Darwin Darwin was, after all, a man of his time, class, and society. True, he was committed to a monogenic rather than the prevailing polygenic view of human origins, right? So Darwin was a monogenic, saying we have a single source, that everybody evolved from one person, one source. While before him, people were saying that it was polygenic, meaning that all the groups that you see today had their own origins. You know, like the Asian man was didn't originate from one of the same people, have common heritage with other people, right? The polygenic view is people were distinct different groups and not related, right? Originally. So Darwin was one of the first people that said, "No, we all have common heritage," which is, a big a plus to him, a big point to him. Because people didn't want to believe that everyone was related. Also, he had contention with the church, right? Because some of the Bible rhetoric were saying that people were different at the time. However, people were trying to um, uh, 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 people were trying to wield the Bible in that way, right? Saying that, people were distinct, different people in origin and not related. Um, Rather than the prevailing polygenic view of human origins, but he still divided humanity in distinct races according to different skin, eye, or hair color. So he still created his own taxonomy to organize humans. So he wasn't going with the prevailing view of how, really what people was going by was what the biblical narrative is, how you classify people, right? He also he also he also was convinced that evolution was progressive, right? So what does that mean? Darwin was convinced that evolution was progressive, meaning that evolution has a direction, that the further you go in time, the more advanced humanity is getting biologically, right? So he was saying, the more we progress in time, meaning the better we get, which is not necessarily true. And you could also argue the reverse, that the further you go in time, the less diverse we are getting, right? The more bad we are becoming biologically, the more negative is coming, right? So you could argue it in the reverse, but Darwin seen evolution as progressive. Like the further we go into history, the more biologically adapt we are getting, and biologically, that's different than saying socially adapting. You know what I'm saying? And that the white races, especially Europeans, were evolutionary more advanced than black races, thus establishing race differences and racial hierarchy, right? And that is from the National Library of Medicine. There's a source on that, right? In 1891, towards the end of his life, Charles Darwin wrote to a colleague that the more, quote, this is Charles Darwin's own words, quote, more civilized so-called Caucasian races have beaten the Turkish Hollow in the struggle for existence. Looking to the world at no very distant day, what an endless number of the lower races would have been eliminated by higher civilized races throughout the world. I want to say that again. Quote, more civilized so-called Caucasian races have beaten the Turkish Hollow in the struggle for existence. Looking to the world at no very distant day, what an endless number of the lower races would have been eliminated by the higher civilized races throughout the world, end quote. This was not just some offhand comment unrelated to Darwin's science, right? you can't separate how he feels, right? This is a letter that he wrote to a colleague, right? And you want to keep it in context, right? So he's talking about, uh, the Caucasian or the higher class people, right, is going to exterminate the lower classes. He said this is an inevitability, right? That this is going to happen, right? Because, you know, um, evolution is progressive, right? And they are the progressors, right? They are, the civilized races, right? The civilized people. This is not just some offhand comment unrelated to Darwin's science. It reflected important elements of his theory of human evolution. Indeed, he articulated this same principle in his scientific study of human evolution, The Descent of Man, where he claimed, quote, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. What does that mean? So, people talk about social Darwinism as if, you know, people say, no, you're talking about social Darwinism. Well, it seems like Darwin was talking about social Darwinism according to his own words, right? This is racist rhetoric, right? So I want to read it again. Quote, at some future period not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Now, who is civilized man? And that's why I keep telling people who have racist rhetoric and don't even really realize it. They talk about, oh, we brought them civilization and, they can stay in the Stone Age and we brought them industrialized nations. Like that has nothing to do with being civil, right? And whenever you say you bring people civilization, you're implying that they're savage or they're barbarians, right? And that is a racist narrative, right? That is a negative narrative, right? And people try to act like they don't mean nothing by it when some people don't know better. But the fact that people aren't technologically advanced as another people doesn't mean that they are less civil or savage, right? I'll make another argument later on, but that's the narrative that people are trying to push, right? That some people do other people a favor, and some people are less civilized than other people, which I don't necessarily dispute, but people be trying to biologicize it, right? Saying that it's innate, right? And saying that this is a part of nature, that since we are the higher class of people, right, which that's not the case, right? It's not the case that you are by nature more high. It's just that if you got advanced technology, you got the tools and technologies to take what you want, and you can legitimize it any way that you feel, right? Two prominent historians specializing in the history of Darwinism, Adrian Desmond and James Moore, mince no words about the racism inherent in Darwin's theory. In their magisterial biography of Darwin, they state, social Darwinism is often taken to be some extraneous and ugly consecration added to the pure Darwinian corpus after the event, tarnishing Darwin's image. But his notebook makes plain that competition, free trade, imperialism, racial extermination, and sexual inequality were written into the equation from the start. Darwinism was always intended to explain human society. That's what people don't want to accept, right? If we're gonna deal with the man, we can deal with the man, and if we want to deal with his theory, outside of the man, we can do it. Like I am able to separate the two, right? But let's not just champion Darwin like he wasn't a racist, right? Because he really was, and we're going to use his own words against him that makes it so. It might come to a surprise to some that Desmond and Moore include racial extermination in this list, since in a later book, Darwin's Sacred Cause, how a hatred of slavery shaped Darwin's views on human evolution. They emphasize Darwin's humanitarianism and portrays loathing of slavery as a fundamental influence of his view of human evolution. However, if one actually reads Darwin's Sacred Cause, one may be surprised to find that despite their primary thesis, Desmond and Moore have not at all changed their position about Darwin embracing racism and even racial extermination. Because he denounced slavery does not mean that you're not racist. Those are two different things. You can have one without the other. By biologicizing colonial eradication, survival of the fittest, Darwin is saying it is in human nature to exterminate the lesser humans. That was in his own words, right? By biologicizing colonial eradication, Darwin was making racial extinction an inevitable evolutionary consequence. Races and species perishing was the norm of prehistory. The uncivilized races was following suit, except that Darwin's mechanism here was modern day massacre, imperialist expansion, and becoming the very motor of human progress. It is interesting, given the family's emotional anti-slavery views, that Darwin's biologicizing of genocide should appear to be so dispassionate. Natural selection was now predicated on the weaker being extinguished, right? Individual races even had to perish for progress to occur. This is, thus it was that wherever the European had tried, death seems to pursue the Aboriginal, right? Europeans were agents of evolution. Europeans were the agents of evolution. Pritchard's warning about Aboriginal slaughter was intended to alert the nation, but Darwin was already naturalizing the cause and rationalizing the outcome. That's the theory of evolution, right? If you don't really understand, that's Darwin's theory of evolution, right? We get some good mechanisms out of it, but he was trying to do something more nefarious, right? The racism of Darwin and Darwinism, that's where you can find that at. Darwin was writing this theory that we all descend from a common ancestor, but he was wrong in the ranking of humans and instituting a hierarchy, right? So, all right. So that's Darwin in his own words. So we don't have to guess about it. You know what I mean? We don't have to mince words about it. We don't have to act like it's not what it is. Like, oh, Darwin was just a man of his time. He was just, it was a time where things were just, he knew exactly what he was doing, right? And he tried to slip that into science, right? He's tried to slip in some pseudoscience, right? I mean, let's talk about it. Let me drop the link. We can talk about it. Why was he wrong? You got to say which part, because, it's a lot here. Which part, and I can address it. You can put it in the chat, or if you want to jump on and ask. I got like a good 30, 45 minutes or so. And we ain't got to argue about it. We can have a good conversation about it. You know what I mean? But, why was he wrong is because Europeans aren't the agents of evolution and civilization, right? These were his words, that the Caucasian races, pretty much duty is to eradicate the lower races, right? Because it's just the nature, all history, species have gone extinct and have been consumed by either, nature or other species. So he looks at that and want to project that onto, the different classes of men, so-called classes of men, right? And say that, we are at the forefront of human evolution, and we're looking at these other people that are undeveloped, right? Which is biased. You know what I'm saying? Like people, I'll give you an example, right? Let's take a set of indigenous people, right, that are nomadic people, tribal people. They don't have electricity, running water, wherever the case may be, right? But they happy, right? They don't have to pay nobody rent, right? They have a more equal share of like governance, right? They may have a chief type guy, but they don't necessarily have to listen to them. They can come and go as they please, right? So if you had the option today, what type of society would you rather live in? Because I want a plot of land to myself to where I can freely go. I don't really want to have to work. I want to be able to till my land with my own resources. I would like to have electricity at the very least, but if I didn't have running water and all that and I could still get to it, I would much rather have my land and live in the country and be unto myself rather than live in a society to where I have to, you know, uh, be a modern slave. You know what I'm saying? So you have societies that don't want to, you know, don't want to assimilate to the Western world's view of what civilization should be. And that's valid, right? People that don't want to assimilate, because think of what you're giving up, right? Think of what you're giving up. And then like indigenous societies, they don't really even understand what they're giving up because they see us over here in the Western world and they see we got all these toys, we got all of these luxuries. But what are you giving up for the luxuries? You become a modern day slave, right? That's really what you're giving up. You really volunteering to be a slave, right? When beforehand you're not, right? You're free, right? You have your liberty, right? More liberties. Come and go as you please. You have your own land, or you don't have no land, and you just get to live off of all the land, right? Those are the things that you give up. Those are the trade-offs, right? So you can either be the labor class and have the luxuries, or you can be free and work hard on your own stuff. Life may be a little bit harder, but you're not under nobody's thumb, right? And then to try to try to legitimize it, right, and put it in science to make people believe that this is all a part of nature, right? Look at nature. All species has perished because either other species or nature, and then put yourself at the top of the hierarchy and say, oh, it's our duty to civilize the world. These other places are undeveloped. We need to eradicate these people. You know what I'm saying? Like that's out of his own words. But whenever you look at it in the reverse today, right? What does what does nature say today compared to what Darwin says? Nature says today that the European, the Caucasian is going to be eradicated by the brown people. That's what science says today. And that's the truth. If you really want to talk about it, that's what nature is saying, right? That's what nature is really saying. He tried to reverse it, right? And you could even make the distinction whenever you realize you are the minority on the planet, you will want to reverse that narrative, right? And do what you try and do what you try and do what you may, right? So what's the reality, right? That Europeans are the progressors of civilization and need to, beat back everybody else and civilize it. Like that's the reasoning. But the real reality is you about to be consumed, right? So that was the rhetoric that he was trying to use to legitimize hierarchy, right? And put certain people at the top of the ladder and try to make it seem like that's the natural order, which I think that the people that should be at the top of the ladder is people that deserve it, right? Merit, right? And you don't have to go around colonizing people and bringing democracy to people and bringing industry to people and bringing banks to people and bringing all this BS that people ain't necessarily asked for. Now, if people want to come to you and volunteer to do it, so be it. But it's not nobody's job to go, quote unquote, civilize the world and bring them into civilization as if they are uncivil, right? I don't even like the term underdeveloped, right? And we know we have like ghettos and stuff like that to where it's true, but you don't want to use that to like, what about the people like in the Amazon and shit like that? Like, there's tribes that don't want to deal with us. Leave them be. Like, who are we to impose what we think is, civilization or what is good on people that's getting along just fine without us, right? That's what's silly. That's the arrogant part. You know what I mean? Like, and then people want to talk about the law of conquest. I understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand people get their ass kicked and get their shit taken. That's life. But then don't come on the internet and be trying to like make it seem like this is innate, because humans can go against that. Like you don't have to do these things. People say that's just part of human nature. I mean, maybe so, but the great thing about humans is that we can do whatever the fuck we want to do. Like we can realize our faults and not do it. We can go against our instincts, right? That's the good thing about humans, right? That is what the blessing is about humans. That is the greatest thing about humans, is that we can actually learn from our mistakes, write it down, and then pass it forward, so we don't have to keep making the same mistakes, right? So even if something is innately in us, we don't have to abide by it. We can actually make social contracts, rules, policies, that will push us in a direction that what we want to see, even if it's not in our so-called nature or what have you. All right, what's Chairman talking about now? You can live the sort of agrarian life you want. Nobody is stopping you from rejecting technology and returning to nature. Go get your culture back that was taken from you. We're talking about Darwin, right? We're talking about it ain't nobody's job to, impose, eradicate the lower classes of races, the words from his mouth, right? So let's not change the subject. We're talking about Darwin's intentions with natural selection and evolution from his own mouth. So yeah, you are right, but let's talk about Darwin and what his intentions were, right? He was a bastard, right? We get some good stuff out of him, like the mechanism of evolution. If that's true, like I accept that, but the rhetoric around it, he was a bastard, right? So I don't accept Darwinism as a whole. I accept natural selection. That's it. And I know what he was trying to do with natural selection, but you need to have natural selection neutral, right? It needs to be neutral. Yeah. I don't know about evil, but I believe that people are trying to direct the world in the way that they see fit, right? Which men should do. But I don't have to accept the rhetoric, right? It's bogus rhetoric, right? People try to make you believe that you're less than, right? Whenever these narratives is going in science and it's pseudoscientific, a motherfucker is trying to make you believe that you have a certain place under them. That's the issue, right? And I just told you I would live a different way if I could. You know what I'm saying? Like if I had the means to, I would, you know? So that's really what I wanted to talk about this morning, man. Like, people be trying to act like Darwin is innocent and he made this hella big contribution. Well, luckily, we caught the pseudoscience inside of his science, right? And luckily, we was able to keep some of his letters that he wrote between him and his colleagues that didn't make it into his work and get to see what his true intentions were. And I think we need to hold Darwin to his intentions, like we should hold everybody into their intentions, right? But the thing is about intentions, they are hard to see, right? And if you have an agenda, you don't put them into your work because you're trying to work an agenda, politics, right? So there's nothing wrong with holding that man to his words. There's nothing wrong with that. He said what he said. He meant what he meant. So, you can promote Darwin if that's how you feel, but we know his nature. You know what I'm talking about? And with that being said, welcome to the principles. I hope you guys have fun. I got some stuff I need to do. I'll come back later on. Hopefully some people want to come up and chop it up about it. If not, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.